Hey, beautifuls. So, I wanted to get on here and get this message out that I have been trying to get out for the last few days. But my voice, when you're going through some changes, your body changes. When you're going through transitions and transformations, your body's changing. When you're shedding old skin and stepping into a new body, things change. It's like when you go through puberty or when you're having a growth spurt and your voice starts changing, when you're transitioning into a different version, into a new cycle of yourself. That's something that happens to me whenever I'm leveling up in my cycles of self. So, anyway, in this cycle of self, one of the things that came up in my reflections was about being seen. And over the years, that is something that has come up often in my reflections, is about being seen, you know, letting my light shine. And the question is, what are you afraid of? Why are you afraid of being seen? That would be the question that I would ask myself over the years. But when I asked myself that question this time, it was a matter of, I'm not afraid of being seen. So I couldn't answer, what are you afraid of? Because the things that did create fear back in those other years of reflection, I have worked through those things and worked on those things. And those things aren't fears for me anymore. And these would be things like, you know, what other people may think, other people's response to me just showing up and be who I am. Because over the years, me showing up and being who I am, I have ran into some things being that way. But when I thought about it this time, it wasn't about fear. It was about protection. And protecting my space, my sacred space. Like, me sharing who I am is not just me sharing channeled messages or me sharing insights that I've gained through my own reflections and my own self discovery and all of that. It's not just that. It's a part of who I am. You know what I'm saying? It's not just sharing me, what I'm saying? And my space is sacred. My energy is sacred, and I protect the sacredness of that. And so when I think about opening up my sacred space to more people, that is what gives me pause. I'm protective of my space, very protective of my space, like, as we all should be, protective of our spaces, protective of who we are, protective of our sacredness. But in my reflections, the wisdom that I gained from that is, you've done the work to make your space sacred, and opening up your space doesn't take away from the sacredness of it, but that also doesn't take away the things that you did to continue to keep it sacred and safe and protected. And so as I move forward on this journey that I'm in right now, and I start sharing more and more of myself, sharing more and more of what I've gained, the wisdoms that I've gained, the channel messages that I receive, and all of the things like that, I will be keeping my space sacred. And that brings me peace, because no one can take away from that unless I allow. And that's the wisdom that comes from that. So it isn't fear, it's protection right now. That is what I'm working through. And I would say this to anybody out there that is having the same experience with being seen as me at this journey, at this point in my journey, where it is about, hey, this is my space, it's protected. I've done a lot of work to protect this space that I'm in right now. And, I don't want to have to go through those same things again to keep my space sacred. I would say this. You've already done it. You've already created the sacred space. It's going to be sacred as long as you are respecting your space as sacred. And when there is a level of understanding that how someone else perceives or receives you in your authentic self, as your full self, as, you in all your transparency, however someone receives you in that space, that is their work. That is their journey. Is a reflection of their journey, not a reflection of your worthiness, not a reflection of your ability to understand, not a reflection of your intelligence, not a reflection of your intention. But you showing up as yourself is absolutely all of those things. It's a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of your intention, your integrity, your authenticity, how you see yourself. And so, since I know my space is going to remain sacred because I make it so, there isn't a need to keep the doors closed, so to speak, And so I am on the journey now of allowing people to come into my sacred space. It kind of reminds me of when you go to a temple, and the temple has its rules, right? It has the way that you have to show up to enter into that space. And that's the same way my space is, and spaces that I create. You have to show up a certain way in order to be, in order to gain access, right? It may be open, but it's not unlimitedly accessible. There are requirements, right? As it should be, and as we all should have those things in place when we decide to share spaces of who we are. Anyway, that's the message. And if you heard it, if you were led here, I hope you got what you came here for.